So today we have Dean Avinandan Mukherjee. He is the dean of the College of Business. So since we have a lot of freshmen here, I always think it's always a good idea to sort of explain the structure of the way a college works or a university works. So of course we have Marshall University, and we have our president, which is President Jerry Gilbert, who you guys have probably seen in the news and in his picture and tweets. He does a lot of selfies. He's the president. And then underneath the university, there are, I believe, 9 or 10 different colleges. So of course, we're the College of Business. There's the College of Arts. There's the College of Science. There's the College of, all of these different engineering. There's all these, and those are all like little schools underneath the university, right? Those are all little colleges underneath the university umbrella. So Dean Avi is the head of the College of Business. Whenever you hear the term dean, it means that they are the ones that are the bosses of that school, right? So that's the way to sort of understand the structure of universities and sort of give you a little bit of background of Dean Avi's role. And with that, Avi, do you want to say hello before we jump into the questions, or do you want to just jump right into the questions?
Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing me here. It's always great to be in this class. I have done it once before. This is the second time. And, this Business 100 class is really important because it kind of gives an overview of the whole world of business and shows how the different parts sort of come together. I also want to mention that you are, I think, extremely lucky to have a professor like Dr. Ng doing this class for you, because he is, everybody wants him in their classes. And of course, he not everybody will get him in their classes. So to have him at this, teaching you the basics of business and getting you excited about business is something that we all feel like is a very special opportunity that you all have. And, we are all jealous for that. So that's an awesome thing to have. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, well, thanks, Avi, for the kind words. And of course, a good teacher is only as good as his students, and I've got great students, and that's the reason they make me look good. I've been riding their coattails for years, so I appreciate that, but it's because of these guys and also and your leadership as well for the school. The school is really transformed under Dean Avi's leadership, and you guys, the students in here, are going to be the beneficiaries of that. We've already talked a lot about the building in here, Avi, and they're super excited, and all the new changes that are going with Brad and Intuit and all the things they're learning. And it's a really amazing time to be part of the College of Business. So we'll go ahead and jump right in and sort of understand a little bit about you and your career and your background, and how did you get to to be the leader of the College of Business at Marshall? It's an amazing career path, and just wanted to have you talk a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Great. Well, thank you again. So just to reflect back a little bit, I have 4 things in my background that I'll mention. The first is my global background. I have international experience, and I'll talk about that. I'm originally from India, and I actually traveled and worked in different countries along the way before I reached Marshall. So I want to describe that a little bit. The second is my undergrad degree and how I've evolved from that in terms of a combination of engineering and then business. The third is academics and practice, and I'll talk about how those 2 things link up. And the 4th is on sectoral areas, like working in different industries. So I'll combine them back again at the end of this question, but let me go through sort of chronologically what I did. So after schooling in India, I went to an engineering college and did my undergraduate in engineering. It was in electrical engineering with a specialization in computers and control systems. But I kind of liked engineering for sure, and I liked the fact that you kind of make things and you see how things work together and all that kind of stuff. But as I did my engineering degree, and towards the end of it, I worked I did an internship in a company, in a factory, in a large power plant, and all that. And then right after that, I got my first job in a global engineering company. It's called ABB, Asia Brown Boveri, which is a Swedish company, European company, but a really multinational company. They're huge presence in the US and all over the world. And as I started working in the world of business, I realized that business is a lot more than the technical aspects of the product, right? So, while as an engineer, I was helping in design and development, and you do the math and you design the product and it works, which is great. And we all have to do that. If you start business, you have to do that. You have to develop products, but it's much more than the product. And that's when I slowly started getting interested about business, right? Because I was working in a company after all. And I realized the value of money and resources and markets and customers and employees and human resource management issues and all of that kind of stuff. So I worked in industry for 3 years. And then right after that, I got into my doctoral program in business. So that already was my transition into business. I enjoyed doing marketing towards the end of my 3 years of work experience. I started off as a design engineer, and then I soon realized I was spending a lot of time with my customers as a design engineer explaining the product. And that's when I said, okay, let's try and understand the customer. And then as I saw more and more of the literature and all that, I got really interested, got into an MBA and then a doctoral program. And then once I finished it, I decided to start in academic profession. So I became an academic at that point, and then I started moving from country to country. I'll tell you a little background. During my doctoral program, I spent a year in France. And then, once I started teaching, I taught in Singapore for some time. I was teaching in the UK for a couple of years in England. And then I came to the US, and I taught at the Penn State campus. I taught at Rutgers and Montclair in New Jersey. And then I moved to Atlanta. I was dean in Atlanta, and then I moved here as the dean 3.5 years back. So, one part of my background, therefore, is this combination of business and sort of science, right? And you will have to do that. If you start a business yourself, and entrepreneurship is Bening's, field, and, we have this great iCenter that produces all these wonderful ideas, new business ideas. Whenever you have a business, there is a product, and by product it could be a service, it could be a physical good, but there is something to sell. And while you have to pay a lot of attention to that, you will also have to pay a lot of attention to the rest of the business processes. How will you get the product to the market? How do you sell it to your customers? How do you position the company? How do you hire your employees? How do you manage money? How do you raise capital, right? All of that are very important. So my first lesson with the career is have a combination of technical aspects as well as business aspects. You can't succeed in one without the other. You can't be just a business person, because there is always a product in business. So let's say you join a company which does music marketing, right? It's an agency that handles musicians, let's say. The musician is the product, right? So, I used to teach a class earlier in brand management, and we had a case on Lady Gaga. It's a very famous case from a Harvard case on Lady Gaga. And the point is, who is the product? Lady Gaga is the product at that time, right? Because you are managing that brand to a wide group of stakeholders. You have to understand music, and you have to understand the musician for that. If you don't do that, if you don't like music, you can be a marketing manager for Lady Gaga. But on the other hand, you also have to understand the business side. So combine the technical and the business side. That's number one. Number two, be oriented to differences in cultures and groups and countries and so on. Right? In today's world, the world is global, first of all. And number two, within the US too, there's a lot of variation between customer segments, right? We talk about the coasts versus the interiors of the country. We talk about different ethnic groups, different religious groups, different, all kinds of segments, right, as we call them. And you have to be able to be sensitive to differences between segments as we start developing our own careers. So in other words, have you catered to international audiences, multicultural markets, certain geographies? You can't grow in your company unless you have a portfolio of all of that. Bening lived in Los Angeles, right, before he came back here. He's from here, but that experience changes a lot of things, and it's important. The third thing I'll say is this combination of business and academics. You're already in academics, you're in college, but make sure that you do the internship, you do that externship, look at a company, work in a company. Because as you combine the two sides, and then maybe come back to academics, do a master's, right? Maybe do a doctorate at some point, but keep them going at the same time. You don't want to just do one or the other. You can't be a good professor if you have never worked in business. And I mentioned my work experience. Ben has worked in the industry. And similarly, you can be a good practitioner without any understanding of academic profession or theory if you haven't gone to college at all. That's hard to be successful in the world of business. And the fourth thing I'll mention is working across industries. I feel like that diversity is also very important. So when I started in my doctoral dissertation, I worked on the automobile industry. And I was working on a huge project that came from MIT. MIT wrote a book at that time called The Machine That Changed the World. And it's one of the most famous business books ever written. It has sold a lot of copies. It's a fascinating book by three people called Womack, Jones, and Roos. And the idea, what MIT wrote in that book, and this was 1990s, right? I'm really old, and it's a long way back. But the thing is, this book talked about how the Japanese companies were conquering the US market in automobiles. And by then, it had already happened. It's not like when they wrote the book in the 90s, late 80s to 90s, it's a post facto analysis. And the point was that when, you know the Japanese companies, Toyota, Honda, when they came to the US market, at the beginning, they were looked at as low quality producers of cars. They were cheap, they were low quality, they were just another brand, nobody took them seriously. But within a few years, the Japanese brands went up in quality. Today, you have Lexus, you have Infiniti, you have Acura, you have all these great brands, and Japanese products are considered to be the hallmark of quality, not laggard quality, right? So that in itself was something to look at in terms of how do you gain access and understanding across industries. That was my start, automobile industry. Then I worked in engineering sector. I worked in an engineering company. I mentioned ABB, which is in power electronics and all that. And then after that, I worked a lot with companies in the pharmaceutical and healthcare field. I worked in New Jersey as a business professor and as a department chair. And we worked a lot with the pharma companies because New Jersey is the world capital of pharma. All these big pharma are headquartered there, from Johnson & Johnson to Merck to everybody else, Bristol Myers Squibb. And Pfizer is in New York, but very close. And you are constantly working with pharma. You can't be in business without looking at pharma in New Jersey. So again, as I finish, 4 things. Number 1, develop an experience that go across one consumer segment to many segments. So global, multicultural, that's 1. Second, technical and business, a combination of the two. You can be an engineer and a business person. You can be just a technical person. I mean, a lot of us are good in computer science, making apps, right? You need to know that side, and you also need to know how to market it. The third combination is academics and practice. You need to combine the two. Even after you leave school, keep coming back because you need those new ideas from the world of academics and apply them to practice. One without the other is meaningless. And the fourth is different segments, different sectors of the industry, different industries, essentially. As you move from industry to industry, you kind of gain a broader perspective as a manager, and that will only help you. So if you start as Lady Gaga's manager and then become the manager of Toyota, that can only help you. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that you are going across industries and becoming a management person.
That's an awesome answer. Thanks, Avi. And I love the point-by-point answers. It's going to really, putting them in buckets really allows them to clearly see the different things that they need. And I love the Lady Gaga reference as well. It's amazing, anytime there's there's these students probably Billie Eilish, isn't she big? I don't know. There's some other ones now that they probably know that we've never even heard of. But I actually want to go a little bit out of order on the questions because you mentioned something that was really important, which was about the experience, like experiential learning, and really applying what you learn. Business, taking the theory of business and putting it in actuality was a big part of what you said. It threaded in so many of the 4 buckets that you mentioned. So the fourth question, and I'm just mentioning this for the students too, because I know it's out of order for you, but I'm going to skip to the 4th question and then go back to the 2nd and 3rd later. But the 4th question is really about some of the things that we're doing in the business school to help students with those 4 goals that you mentioned, in particular the experiential learning. But not only that, but I was just going to see what your thoughts were in terms of how the business school is preparing students for these things that you mentioned, and of course, experiential learning and some building and all sorts of stuff. But I'll let you go ahead and talk about your vision and your goals and your plans for the students moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, so that's a great question. And one of the things I sincerely believe, and I know Ben believes more than me perhaps in this as well, is that you cannot learn business and be good in business without going into the business place, the world of the world of business, the markets and so on, and understanding how things work. So there is no business education without being in business. It's just not possible. It's like this. Think about medicine, right? Think about med school. Think about law school. You cannot be a doctor, or you cannot practice to be a doctor. Nobody will make you a doctor till you have worked with patients, you have been on the hospital floor, you have actually seen how patients are treated, you have tried to diagnose a patient's problems. It's exactly the same. Think about law, right? Where legal cases become the benchmark for learning. I mean, there is no law school that teaches law as a bunch of theories. Law is always taught as an element of practice, looking at previous cases and how we learn from those cases and what applies therefore. Business is exactly like that. So business is where you learn from looking at companies. And therefore, one of the things that I will say every time is, in every class, in some form or the other, in my opinion, in business, there is some element of practice. That could be many. You know, in some classes, there are guest speakers, like I am a guest speaker today. In some classes, there are externships and field visits. So in 1 or 2 days of the class, you will be going somewhere to actually visit a company. In some classes, there is someone coming in online and speaking. In some classes, there is a case study used in the class. In some courses, there may be a simulation. In some courses, there may be just some examples, right? You know, every chapter has a couple of good examples and discussions. Whatever it is that you are doing, you know, make sure you are connecting to the world of business, because if you are ultimately everybody will work in business. Let's go back there and let's understand, whatever your field is, whatever your major is, you are going to be in an organization of some kind, or you will be an entrepreneur, which is still business. You have to sell something. So let's say that, you know, imagine this, that we are, you know, you are talking about studying pharmacy, let's say, and you know, you are a pure pharmacist, right? You are learning all the chemicals and all the formulas and making a drug and getting it out. But the moment you start working in the field, you have seen pharmacies in CVS, for example, they are now talking about insurance and costs and working with patients and even doing some recommendations of what drugs work and what doesn't work. They are talking about dosages and vials and supply chain and getting the product at the right time so it doesn't become bad. You start looking at it and you see that even in there's a business. CVS is a business, even though you're a pharmacist working there. So we are all going to be in business, and business is the great leveler. And in order to be prepared for that world, we have to have our college ready to prepare you for that. So that's the background. What are we doing there? I would say number one thing we are doing there is really design thinking. You know, the problem with business is that there are three problems with business, let's say again. Number one, we tend to look at business as silos, right? So, you know, for some reason, you will see that business programs, business courses, if you are in the business school, you will know you will have a course in marketing, a course in finance, a course in operations, a course in management, a course in strategy, a course, you know, right, MIS and so on. And each of these look like isolated. Each one is a field in itself. And so, you know, typical management business disciplines are those five. There's accounting, there is finance, there is management, there is marketing, there is operations. And you look at them and you say, oh my God, these are all separate things. There's a separate professor, there's a separate textbook, and I don't see any connections. But there are connections. And understanding these connections is absolutely critical. It's like, you know, think about a doctor again, training to be a doctor, right? And you have a chapter on, you know, where you talk about respiratory diseases. Then there is a chapter on cardiovascular diseases. Then there is a chapter on brain and nervous diseases. But they're all linked. We know that. I mean, hearts and lungs and brain are all related. It's just that they are taught separately. But at the end of the day, a successful business person is one who can see the relationships between these different aspects of business. That's what this course does. Introduction to Business is helping you to combine all aspects of business. This course does it, and the last course does it, which is strategy. Those are the two places where you get everything combined. In between, they kind of go apart a little bit. Entrepreneurship brings it together also to some extent. But my first contention is, think of the interlinkages between your courses and between all the things you are learning. Okay, it will look like marketing is not the same as finance. They're different. They're different professors, they're different departments, different courses, different textbooks. But think of it also this way: if you are operating in the financial market, and we will talk about, you know, going to the market and raising money, capital markets, stock markets, right? Is it only finance because we are talking about stocks? And the answer is no. A company that does well in the stock markets is doing something good about markets, is doing something good about marketing, getting its product out successfully, launching the product. You know, Apple gets a good stock market response whenever they introduce a new product and it does well. If it doesn't become successful in the market, the stock price goes down. It is not just finance, right? And try to see those linkages. And I think that's where a good business person is different from, you know, somebody who's going by these disciplines. So go across this, number one. And we are exactly trying to do that, build an integrated curriculum that combines these things. The second thing I'll talk about our business curriculum is we are teaching only concepts, not skills. Focus on skills, right? Concepts will come and go. So, I mean, there are concepts. You know, the product life cycle is a concept. We use the concept of the PLC, and you may have seen it or you will learn it in some marketing class, that every product goes through a life cycle which looks like a bell curve, which starts with introduction, then there is growth, then there is maturity, and then there is decline. And I remember in the case on Lady Gaga, we used the same PLC. We plotted the PLC and we tried to predict when Lady Gaga will go from growth to maturity and decline. And 2.0 of Lady Gaga, right, where you know she does something new and becomes big in a different way. PLC is a concept, but we are looking at a skill set that applies these concepts to the world of business. Focus on skills. Concepts change, skills don't. So what are some of the skills? Obviously, analytics is a skill. Being able to do analytical thinking. Critical thinking is a skill. Design thinking is a skill. Communication is a skill. Problem solving is a skill. Project management is a skill. And you can go on. Entrepreneurial thinking is a skill. Innovation is a skill, right? Skills last forever. Concepts come and go because new ideas will be coming, new theories will be coming, and the textbooks will keep changing. But acquire the skills that make you successful in your job from day one. That's what we want you to be. We want you to come into the workplace and be able to contribute from day one so that you can secure your job and make yourself indispensable to the company. And for that, we need to focus on skills, not just concepts. And my third point, so first was the silos, break the silos, become cross-disciplinary. Number two, don't just focus on concepts, focus also on skills, which is the second thing. And the third thing that I would say, which is really making business education, you know, sort of new and into the next world, is the fact of these sort of other than business, beyond business ideas. And the reason I say that is because if you are not sensitive to that in today's world, right? This is not yesterday's world. Yesterday's world, you would be just fine. In today's world, it would be hard to succeed. It's something we are all grappling with, okay? All of us are grappling with. In today's world, if you are a successful manager, you have to lead the pathway to new ideas. And when I say new ideas, I'm talking about gender equality. We are talking about racial equity. We are talking about sustainability. We are talking about corporate social responsibility. We are talking about things that we, you know, like stakeholder value maximization instead of shareholder, maximization. There is beyond business ideas, which you will hear from CEOs after CEOs after CEOs, right? Yesterday we had a CEO panel. You two big celebrities speaking, and they were, you have seen, most of you were there perhaps, Shelley Archambault, Chris Gardner, both of them talked about their business knowledge, and they were going beyond business. They were not just talking about business. The LinkedIn former CEO, Jeff Weiner, spoke in our CEO forum the last time in the fall. And he talked about all these other elements, how do you collaborate? How do you make the world a better place, right? And so on. And, when you look at CEOs after CEOs, Salesforce CEO, for example, he talks about how, his company can contribute to, world peace, and, things like that, right? CSR, again. There is a lot of beyond business ideas that will be critical. And so in our new curriculum that Beneng is actually leading in that work, and he's talking to a number of stakeholders and getting all these ideas. And I hope, you think about it and maybe raise some questions here or later. We have to go beyond pure business thinking to how to make the world a better place. And the only way to do that is through business. Nobody else can do that. Only we can do that. How do we do that is what we have to think about.
That's awesome. Yeah, and in many ways in this class, that's exactly what their challenge is to not just come up with a business like a new cupcake factory or new cupcake business, but really businesses that attempt to solve the greatest challenges that the world faces. And they're doing a great job with it, and I'm really excited about some of the things that they have in store. But you actually mentioned a really great point, and that every job that exists, whether you start your own business or you work for a business, ultimately becomes like back to business. There's no job out there that business does not apply to. Every job that you have, business will be applicable. And so the next question on the list is, what makes business degrees popular? So, there's the utility of the business degree, that the fact that they'll need it, but are there other reasons that make business, and just to let you guys know, business degrees are always one of the biggest colleges in every university, because they are popular. So just kind of curious why you think business degrees are so popular and what makes them such a great investment. Yeah.
Great question. So first of all, business is the most popular undergraduate degree in the country. Okay, it is the single most popular undergraduate degree in the US. There are more students study business than any other discipline. Now, having said that, how does it help? Now, the first reason I will give is, of course, what we just talked. Everything is business, right? So let's think about this. Let's say that, after a business degree, or if you are from another college, let's say you go to in a high school. Let's say you want in a high school, and the question is it business, right? The answer is yes. Now, I know that the word business is not always liked by a lot of people. A lot of people say, oh, business, we are not in business, right? They will really tell you we are not in business. But what they are forgetting is they are organizations with management requirements, right? And the moment you have business or management or organizations, you are saying the same thing. The police force is an organization. The high school and the school district is an organization. A church is an organization. All of these organizations need to practice so-called business principles. Okay, so if let's say that you are in a church, the church has to raise money. The church has to cater to its audience and customers, or visitors and members and guests and so on. The church has to organize events. The church has to store money. Has to be able to spend. So there is a ledger. There is an income statement. There is a profit and loss account. There is all of that. Not every organization in business is aimed at making money. Yes, not every organization is profit making or profit oriented, but every organization has to manage itself. Every organization has to survive. You need to have money to survive. I mean, without money, you can't run anything. And that's where the world of business comes in. So whether it's a single person organization, whether it is a large profitable organization, the so-called for-profits, whether it is a not-for-profit organization, whether it is a social organization, or whether it is the government, everything is business. Because even a government, right? I mean, there are city councils that run out of money and eventually cannot offer service to the citizens and would be voted out because they ran the city in a really bad manner. You still need to recruit people. You still need to manage people. You still need to have HR practices. You need to have legal practices. You need to have marketing. You need to have finance. You need to have accounting. You need to have computers and information systems, right? You need to have data analytics. You need to have project management. I mean, we can go on and on and on. You need to have manufacturing. You need to have services. Without all that, like service marketing is a big part of marketing that we teach. And when we teach that, we are talking about all kinds of service. And one of the services, let's say, is utilities, which a city council will provide, and high quality of utilities, right? Making sure that we are able to offer all kinds of services to citizens, from water to electricity to safety to whatever else, is a part of business. So let's look at it in a broader way. Number one. So why is it most popular? Number one, because everything is business. Every sector of human activity is business. Number two, I would say why is business degree so popular is because it combines certain human skills, which you can call as liberal arts skills, with technical skills, right? So, in many disciplines, it's either liberal arts or it is professional. They don't really see the combination. Business does. I mean, it's fascinating. When I started learning business, and I was an engineer, like I said, first course was behavioral sciences. And somebody started talking psychology. The next course was economics. The third course was quantitative methods, pretty advanced statistics and quantitative methods. And the fourth course was law, business law. And I'm thinking, what is this? I mean, these are all different disciplines, completely different colleges in the university. There's a law school, there is a social science and humanities school, which does psychology. There is a quantitative college of science and math. There is how can you combine them all? But if you are in business, you have to. Think of yourself as a CEO in waiting, right? If you are going to be a CEO one day, you will have people under you who will be doing all of this. Somebody will be managing money, somebody will be recruiting people, somebody will be doing training and development, someone will be operating the manufacturing shop, somebody will be distributing and supplying the products, and you are the CEO. You have to know a little bit of everything. We talked about the role of the dean of the business school. In my role, and I had to learn it, right? It wasn't easy, it wasn't automatic. I started off as a marketing professor, and I had a very narrow field, very clear field. I knew marketing, and I knew how to teach marketing and how to do research in marketing. And that's all I knew. I had no appreciation for finance, I had no appreciation for accounting. But now that I am the dean of the business school, and this is my 7th year as a dean of a business school, I am equally interested in other subjects, right? So now, I have to, otherwise I'll lose my job. So like an accounting faculty will come and say, you know what, Sarbanes-Oxley, this clause has changed, the CPA exam requirements have changed, we need to do something. Then healthcare faculty will come and say, oh, this AUPHA requirements have changed, healthcare practitioners need to do something differently. And while I'm not an expert in any of this, I have to know something about everything. That's business, right? Knowing something about everything is business. Being able to quickly grasp, quickly learn, be a rapid learner. You have seen Brad Smith. Our college is named after Brad Smith. He's not only just a benefactor, he's also our mentor, he's our coach, he's everything for the college, right, for us. And Brad Smith, former CEO of Intuit, the chairman of the executive board of Intuit, one of the most powerful CEOs in the world ever, is a super active learner. I find him to be one of the fastest learners I've ever come across. And that's what makes him successful. He is a software company. It does financial software, tax software. But he's now, just yesterday, he was talking to me about, or day before yesterday, about an agriculture company, a company in specialty agriculture where he is investing. And he's learning about agriculture every minute, being on their board. You have to do that, right? Something about everything. That's very important. Everything in business, very important. And the third and last thing that makes business degrees so popular is because it leads directly to outcomes, right? You are here, you are in this program, you are in the business school because you want to be successful in your career. And there is no better pathway. If you are a doctor, you will still be very successful, of course, but there is hardly a better pathway than being in the business school to be successful in your career. You will see all kinds of things. People will say, oh, but 40% of the Fortune 500 CEOs are non-business graduates. Yeah, but if you simply look at how much a business graduate will make over the lifetime versus other grads, we are at an advantage. We are teaching what you will do from day one directly, whereas others have to learn that along the way. A lot of people can learn a lot of things, but if you have a music degree and you are in the world of business, you have to learn business on your job. In the world of business, if you come with an education in business, you already know it. So we focus on outcomes, jobs, career, and it's not just a starting job, not the first job, but throughout your entire career. So student success in terms of careers is the third reason why business is so popular.
Awesome. Thanks, Avi. Really, really great answer on that. It's funny, we talk a lot about Elon Musk, and Elon Musk majored in, I think, physics and econ, but in order for him to learn how to build Tesla and SpaceX, he had to learn so much more than just his major in college. And it's really about being that lifelong learner that Brad exhibits and Elon Musk exhibits and that you exhibit, learning more than just, the thing you start out with. That's really such an important thing. And I think you're right. A business degree gives you that mindset to realize that you always have to be continuing to learn so you can continue to solve these big problems that are out there in the world. So thank you so much. So before we move into questions about current trends in business and all that, I wanted to ask one more College of Business related question, which is the building. This wasn't on the list, but I just wanted to, I know a lot of times the students get excited about cool new digs and all these new places. So I didn't know if you wanted to give them a quick update on how the building is going and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
You'll probably see it. Yeah.
Yeah, you will all see it. Yes, absolutely. Because we are going to get the building done and ready by 2023, and we are going to start teaching there probably from spring of 2024. So it's moving really fast. You have all seen Corby Hall, and you have seen, how we are. I think it's a nice building, but it is not going to cater to our growth, and it is not going to cater to our needs the way we need it. A business school needs to be in a space that fosters interaction, that fosters community building, collaboration, innovation, entrepreneurship, things like that, right? You need to be able to interact with people in a business school. That's what the world of business is. So compare that with an engineering building that will have labs and classrooms and office spaces. In a business school, you need interaction spaces, just like the world of business. We don't have those enough in Cobley Hall. So we are extremely excited because Brad, again, gave us a huge donation in 2018. It was a total of $25 million that came to the College of Business through the university. And 20 of that 25 million is going to go into the new building, along with some extra funds from the university. So we are going to have a new building done. There are 3 companies in the consortium that are working on it, and they are nationally known companies. Perkins Eastman, PJ Dick, these are extremely well-known companies. And what we are doing right now is to sort of envision that building. So again, I would welcome any ideas from any of you on how the new building should be looking like, because it's your building. You will be moving into that building, hopefully, and be able to be a part of it. We are all super excited. It will be a building that will have state-of-the-art architecture, but more importantly, will be open and collaborative in nature, right? Intuit is actually sending designers to help out with the building design, interior design in particular. And you will see a lot of glass, a lot of open spaces, a lot of meeting spaces. So you don't have to leave the building after your classes and go and study in the library. The idea is that you will be in the business building itself before and after your classes and work with students and other things. We will have a great audiovisual kind of linkages all through, so you can work with the world of business through virtual means. There will be many rooms that will be equipped with video conferencing facilities and so on, so people can come in, you can interact with someone, you can interview right in the building with companies, you can do projects. Consulting is a big thing now that the College of Business is doing with businesses, really helping them with real life solutions for real customers and real problems, and you can do that. I think there is tons of things that this new building will be. There will be a nice auditorium. There will be a beautiful atrium with a space, they're calling it the forum, where people will come together and interact and mingle. And really, I think you would love to be in that place. That's the whole idea, that it will be a destination. It will be a place where everybody wants to be and hang out. And then we are trying to have some food services there, so at least people can get coffee and some snacks and be there the whole day. There will be some really great student workspaces. We are talking about a silent student workspace, like a quiet space. There are other spaces where you can do collaboration, small rooms with computers and audiovisuals there, really well-fitted classrooms with digital technologies, and there will be some online students on the wall. We are talking about putting in some LCD monitors where the online students will come in, the rest of the students will be face-to-face, and online and face-to-face students will work together seamlessly. That's the idea. So they are not like 2 different worlds. They are the same world, and they will work as if they are all in the room, even though physically some are and some are not.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like the Jetsons cartoon where we're in the future, where you have all this like interaction between virtual people and real people. It sounds awesome. And guys, for the students, if there's anything that you would love to see in the building, right, put it down in the chat. You're talking to the dean of the business school right now, so he has a say in this kind of stuff. And so if there's anything that you've always wanted in the building that you were like, wow, this would be an amazing thing to have. We actually had a student email us a couple months ago saying, hey, I would really like to see a stock trading floor. Over COVID, there's a lot of students that got into the stock game and started learning how to do stocks, and he wanted to learn more about stocks. So he asked about like having a stock trading room in there. And so anything that you can think of, throw them in the chat, and you're with the right guy today. So moving on to kind of like emerging business trends and sort of kind of like the world has changed so much since March and COVID and all that. What are some things that you're seeing due to COVID, and what do you think the world will be like after we get out of COVID? And hopefully we're getting close. I think we're the vaccine's starting to get distributed and all that. So what do you sort of see as like this post-pandemic world and trends emerging from that?
Absolutely. Okay, so this is a question to which nobody knows an exact answer, but we can all kind of try to think through what the future will be like. Understanding the workplace of the future, right, the future of work, as we call it, is one of the primary goals of the business school. We want to configure it before anybody else does, because we have to prepare you to be successful in the world of business, and then you in turn will develop the strategies, hire employees, and make sure everything else falls in place. Again, I will talk about three big trends, okay, that I think will take precedence over everything else in the post-COVID world. And it's intuitive, you know this pretty much. Let me start the first one with saying that the first thing that will happen is we have to break the molds and think innovatively. So the first trend is design thinking and entrepreneurship. Think like an entrepreneur. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody will be an entrepreneur, right? We are not entrepreneurs. I'm not an entrepreneur right now. I still work in a company. You will be working in a company probably. If you start your own business, wonderful. If you don't start your own business and work in a large company, you are still an entrepreneur. You can make yourself one by thinking like one and acting like one. You know, there is this word intrapreneur, right? Within a company, entrepreneur within a company is an intrapreneur. And there is a scope for that. The reason I say design thinking and entrepreneurship is more important than ever is because all the old thinking and all the old presumptions are gone. Okay, the first is working in the office. You know, previously, you know, right from higher education to schools to workplaces, your input, your productivity was measured by the number of hours you put in. So if you sit in the class for an hour and 15 minutes, you have done your thing. That's what you needed to do, right? If you go to office and you're in the office from, let's say, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., you have done your work. You have done your duties. And increasingly, the new world is not like that. It is not measured by the number of hours you are there physically or not. It is really about what you are doing during that time. So there is enormous flexibility in the design of work, okay, where you can do anything, anytime, from anywhere. And if you looked at yesterday's event, and after that, Brad Smith did a few interviews with WSSE and all that, he talked about the remote working thing, which is where actually West Virginia is taking a lead nationally in remote work, which means you probably would not have to leave the state, even if you want to work for a company that is based in Silicon Valley or in New York City or anywhere else. You can work remotely. So thinking like that requires an entire paradigm shift, right? Breaking completely the standard norms of thinking. And for that, you need design thinking. You need to think in a way that is so different, so innovative. Entrepreneurship, innovation, and design thinking is therefore the first requirement, I would say. Those companies and those individuals will be successful who will be able to break their thinking of the past and embrace these new ways of thinking. And if we cannot do that now, we will fail in this new world. That's one, right? Companies have to rethink their business strategies, and it's a completely new world we are in. And universities too, as higher ed universities, we have to think about how we serve our workplace and how we serve our students in a very different way. And you will get a lot of inputs on design thinking, and that's where iCenter comes in, that's where BUSN comes in, that's where our entrepreneurship program comes in, and all of that. So that's one. The second thing I would say is technology. The role of technology in life and in business is more important than ever, right? So we are using technology to do this class. You will be doing technology to work. You will be doing technology to interview with companies or to network with people or to collaborate with people. Everything will be with technology. And so embracing technology, and when you say technology, we really have to think of the limits of technology and do away with those limits. So, you know, in the world of technology, sometimes we cannot see each other, we cannot feel each other, we cannot, you know, sense each other through all the visual and other forms of senses. And research today is about making that available. So we have artificial intelligence, right? We have augmented reality, we have virtual reality, and all of these things are aimed at transcending the limitations of technology. How do you make technology so real that you feel like you're really in that space? I mean, you know, the 3D, if you think about it, was a little bit like that, right? A 3D movie or something, you know, you sat in the movie theater. I don't know if some of you have been there, but it feels like somebody's going past you and somebody dropped water on you or whatever. I mean, it is surround experience. So the sound is surround sound, the feeling is surrounding you, the visuals are surrounding you. You are in the middle of it. You are not at the end of it. You are not at the periphery, or you are not external. You are inside. You are immersed in the technology. How can that happen is the question. And that's where augmented and virtual realities are coming in, where there is all these sort of AI-based things where you can actually, like, you know, you cannot do, for example, a field visit anymore for a company, right? I mean, let's say you are learning supply chain, and you have to go to an Amazon factory to do a visit, right? So in the olden days, you would go to the Amazon factory right here in Huntington. There is an Amazon workspace, like a call center, but it's a customer service contact center. Or let's say even more, you go to Nashville, and there's a huge Amazon facility there, distribution center, which has miles after miles of distribution networks all built in with rows and all that. And you go in there and you do a tour. You can't do that anymore. So the question is, how do you design technology which will take you inside and will take you through the entire facility, and you will get the same feeling, probably even more than that, without being there physically. So technology is the second thing, and it's really a question of not only limiting or going beyond overcoming the limitations of technology, but actually making it an even more of an advantage. How can technology actually give you an insight that's even more powerful than if you were there physically? Okay, so we talked about number one, design thinking, entrepreneurship, innovation. Number two, technology, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality. The third and last thing I'll talk about is supply chain. One of the things we realized in the pandemic and beyond is you cannot have the kind of supply chain that we used to have in the past, which was global, highly distributed, and focused on getting the cheapest supply. So, we all saw how things disappeared on the shelves as soon as the pandemic hit. We all know how pharmaceutical products stopped coming in our pharmacies because we couldn't bring things from abroad. The flights were not operating, the things were not being made, countries were going out of operation. And what COVID taught us is that you need to ensure your supplies are closer to you so that you have a local supply chain and you have a supply chain that is more customized and in control. Okay? You may have to pay a little more, but you will be more assured of your supply chain, and that serves you better. So the world of global supply chains with the cheapest supply of products is probably over. We are looking at more customized, more sort of more closer, more custom made, and more accessible supply chains that you can do, and that helps to build relationships too. Because think about it. I mean, if you're let's say you're a restaurant and you are procuring food items, right, for your restaurant, you can get them from some other part of the world that has been shipped in 20 days back and so on, or you can procure them from a local farm or something which is more accessible, that is more fresh, that's a little more expensive maybe, but is really cut out for you, and you can get them to do what you want to do instead of just buying what's available. Okay, so supply chain is the third and last element, I'll say, and that is fail-safe, COVID-proof logistics and supply chain.
Wow, that's amazing insight. And I never thought about the impact of how supply chains really just getting destroyed by COVID, and how it's going to cause a reaction of local sourcing, right? Like getting all your parts and getting all your ingredients, which will maybe cause a boom in smaller businesses. Like, so, the idea of entrepreneurship is always risky, like it's never without risk, but it seems like there's an environment now where you can kind of start small and get big if you're really good at business, and you can grow your business in such a way. So maybe that's a good transition to starting businesses in West Virginia, being an entrepreneur in West Virginia. So what do you see as some of the challenges that entrepreneurs and startups face when they're trying to start a business in West Virginia?
I think Ben will agree with me. He knows the entrepreneurship environment very well. In fact, more than anybody else, perhaps. There are 4 things I will mention here. Number 1, culture. Okay. Number 2, ecosystem. Number 3, mentor. And number 4, funding. Okay. Culture. West Virginia is a risk-averse state. Now, when I say that, I don't mean to demean the state by any means, but I want to mention, coming from outside myself, that West Virginia has had a tremendous history and a great legacy, right? West Virginia powered the nation. The country got its energy from us. And in doing so, and yesterday actually the energy secretary of the federal government said the exact same words. So I picked this word up from her, Jennifer. She was I'm forgetting the name, but anyway, she was the governor of Michigan, and she's now the energy secretary under the Biden administration. And she said exactly this: West Virginia powered the country for all these years. because our coal supply and our energy supply was the source of power and electricity and other forms of energy in the country. We had such a great past that we believed in, or we invested in one industry, which is energy, and we believed in the kind of enterprises that had sort of lifelong viability and even sometimes intergenerational viability, right? So if somebody worked in a coal mine, they would have their descendants, their sons and daughters and so on, and the next generation, generations after generations, went in the same profession pretty much, and they were all working with the coal industry and energy industry, and they were just fine. I mean, there are very strong companies with good salaries and lifelong employment, so there was no reason to think differently. But the reason is there now. So culture is going to be an issue. There are good and bad about the culture. The good is that West Virginia is a highly resilient state. We know that. That's a part of the DNA of the state. Resiliency, being able to fight back, being able to rise together, being able to make things. It's a maker state, as we call it, right? West Virginians can make things very well, advanced manufacturing and other forms of manufacturing and all that. So there is a lot of pluses, but the negative is West Virginians didn't have to start their own businesses as much, because there was a ready-made demand for an industry that was there for generations. So culturally, we are risk averse, and we need to change that mindset. And that's where you come in. We are trying to go out of this campus. First of all, within Marshall, we have to change the mindset. But second of all, we have to go out across the state and do that with high school students and middle school students and people in the world of business, but also people who are looking for jobs and people who don't have a college degree. There's a lot of people out there that need to understand that we have to take risks, we have to try new things, we have to be innovative, and that's our job. That's really the College of Business's job, right? To give birth to the inner entrepreneur in everybody. That's what the iCenter does, and we need to keep doing that. That's very important, culture. Number two, ecosystem. So when you have entrepreneurship to thrive, you need ecosystem. And by ecosystem, I mean, you need large banks with good capital, you need energy, you need supply chain, logistics, you need railroads, you need roadways, you need big and nice airports with a lot of flights coming, you need mobility of people, you need growth of people coming in and living here. You need market research companies, you need equity research companies, you need business consulting services, you need housing, you need real estate, you need a lot of things. Businesses don't just thrive. They thrive with everything. You need an art environment, you need Starbucks, you need a coffee shop, you need a nightlife, you need a lot of different things. And if those are not there, businesses won't thrive. And so ecosystem is the second challenge. And I think when we start looking at it, we kind of forget that. We say, oh, let's bring in a few companies to invest. Let's do just this or that. It's not a patchwork. It's a complete ecosystem building. And for that, in different countries, in international context, like in South Korea, in India, they have built model cities. They literally have built cities. And what that city does is it has everything, from banks to parks to power plants, it has everything, right? And it is totally independent of the rest of the country or the state. It's like they call them smart cities, and they have come up all over. They have free internet everywhere, Wi-Fi, everything. So the question is, what can we do? One company will not be able to do it. It's not, we got Virgin Hyperloop, which is great. There are other examples like that, but we won't be able to change everything entrepreneurship culture just with one or two examples. It has to be an ecosystem. The third is mentorship. And I think we have a tremendous amount of mentorship now. That is still a challenge, but it's coming. And mentorship comes with examples, right? The number of West Virginians who see somebody successful in entrepreneurship in front of them is not very high because of that first thing I talked about, culture. We don't have successes as much. So, in a normal business school, Ben and I talk about this a lot. In a regular, school of Marshall size and scope, you would see about 10 businesses being formed every year. That's kind of the number. At Marshall right now, we don't have that. We don't have 10 businesses coming out of Marshall students every year. Businesses that are doing okay, I know in Florida State, the director of the Entrepreneurship Center is a friend of mine. And, he keeps sending me examples of those products that their student businesses are doing. Somebody's making customized socks. And, it's nothing great. Anybody can make a customized socks, but they have developed it nicely. They have put brands, and you can, if I want a Marshall socks, I can, within one day, they will print it and all that. It's really good. They have set up the backend infrastructure. We need mentors. We need examples and successes. And the fourth very important point, on which actually I can talk another time in great detail, is funding. I mean, the ways in which entrepreneurship was funded in the past is no longer there. Those have changed. The rules have changed. So earlier you would go to the bank. Well, the first thing people did was to go to family and friends and get some money and start a business. That was the easiest thing to do. Then, okay, if that's not enough, then you would go to a bank and you would submit some collateral and you will get some loans, right? If you're expecting that you will get loans for your new business ideas from banks, that's the only way you will start your business. It is not going to happen in today's world, because banks take time, banks are highly bureaucratic, and they're extremely risk averse, right? So they are not going to invest in a radical new idea. They are going to say, well, I want to see a demand that is demonstrable. You show me a demand of 1 million people waiting to buy my product, I will give you a loan. If you have that, you're not building something new. You're doing something that's existing. That doesn't work. So the world of funding has changed. And I think the best way to fund a business today, of course, is crowdfunding. I mean, there are these massive crowdfunded platforms that many of you are already aware of, where people go and they set up there. I've done some research on crowdfunding. It is an amazing, amazing world. The world has evolved quite a bit. It started under Barack Obama, President Obama's, and there are new rules that have been put in place. SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, have made sure that the crowdfunding norms are well established, so nobody can cheat anyone there. You can buy equity through crowdfunding. I mean, it is pretty amazing how people are doing that. So that's one. The second thing about funding is VCs and angel investors, and we don't have many of them in West Virginia. We need to get them in, and there's some effort, but not enough there. And the third then is to really go out and do more. So friends and family, banks, those are the two old ways, and those are really not preferred. And then you are looking at crowdfunding as your first step, and then Series A, Series B, Series C, Series D, Series E, up to 5 series of funding through angels and VCs, right? Angel investors and VCs will fund you up to 5 steps. Then you go for an IPO, or you can go for a SPAC, which is the new form of IPO, and that raise money from capital markets. At that time, you are public, and you come with a lot of regulations, a lot of restrictions. And many companies don't want to go there, but that's the last step. Funding is really the key to success. There are many steps before that, which I would encourage you to work on first, and then at some point you will be noticed by funding agencies. We need to create that environment.
It's really great advice, Avi. And of course, in this class too, the big benefit of design thinking is, it number one, of course, it helps you create a great idea that investors love. But what investors really love is not that you think you have a great idea, but that customers think you have a great idea, and testing your idea out on customers so that you can show what investors really like, which is traction. You have some amount of traction that shows that customers, even if it's just, a couple people bought your product or a couple people like your product, that's a lot better than just, speculating, oh, I have a great idea, and trying to convince somebody that it is a great idea. So, I think all the modes that you just mentioned of acquiring funding, whether it's crowdsourcing or angel investors or any of the ones you mentioned, it really kind of just starts with like having a great idea, but testing that great idea and improving that great idea based on customer feedback. So awesome stuff. So now what we'll do for the last couple questions is sort of like some hobbies that an interest of yours that we have. So one thing that students often don't realize is, you see kind of like us as professors, as teachers, but we have this whole other side of work that we do that students don't see, and I wanted to give the students some insight on it, which is research. Business professors, you guys almost kind of think that in many ways we're like your high school teachers, but that's only a small part of our job. A big part of our job is creating the knowledge that goes into your textbooks through research. And Avi, even though he's an incredibly busy guy, running the College of Business, he still works on a lot of research, and he generates all this new knowledge. And I was just wanting to see if you could share some of the research that you've been working on. Obviously, I think you might be working on Lady Gaga research as well, is what it sounds like. But just curious if you could share some of the things that you've been working on with them and in studying.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just like Ben said, I mean, research is almost a part of what we do every day, because the best professor in business is one who does, who teaches in the class, but in order to teach, we use some materials that we are already researching on, right? So teaching, research, and then working with businesses, the external world of working with businesses, are all interrelated. I mean, a good faculty will consult with companies and help them out with a real life problem. We'll use that knowledge to do some research and gain some generalized knowledge, and then bring it back to the classroom and share with students and get feedback and refine it even further. I don't think any one succeeds without the other, because when you are in education, when you are within the confines of a university, you kind of train a curious mind. Inquisitiveness is the hallmark of academia in general, right? Any institution thrives on that spirit of becoming, spirit of inquiry. And so, I mean, to me, it's natural. And if you look at some of the questions, one of the research I've been working on lately, we just did something on contact tracing for COVID. And we just felt it was an important topic because just think about it. I mean, when you look at COVID, right? And when you hear somebody I know got COVID, what's the immediate reaction that comes to our mind? That's kind of what drove us to do that research, because the immediate thing is, oh my gosh, I need to be notified that if somebody I know has got COVID, and if they don't tell me, that's like, that's really bad. That's not what I expect. I expect to know if somebody gets COVID who's close to me, in my workplace, in my social circle, whatever, in my family, etc. Now, in order to do that, contact tracing has got to work. In order to contact tracing to work, somebody will have to track you pretty strongly, right? I mean, you would have to lose your privacy and your security to some extent, and you have to make yourself available. I mean, you may have to download an app on your phone, which gives people access to where you are at any point in time or where you go. Many countries developed apps like that, where if like Israel, for example, or India and many other countries, where you would have that app on your phone and it would track your geographical location. And if there is somebody who got COVID, that will go into the app, and you will literally get an alert like you are walking towards a COVID person, or you're walking away from a COVID person, or somebody just passed you who had COVID, blah, 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 right? Contact tracing can be extremely intrusive. It can literally impinge on your sense of privacy and security. And it is needed because that's the only way you can stop a pandemic in general. Because contact tracing didn't start with COVID. It started with, smallpox and cholera and plague and all that, decades and decades back, AIDS. This is just being applied to COVID. So we did a research where we kind of did focus groups and so on people to understand their real motivations, internal and external, psychological and spoken, about what they feel about contact tracing. And we got a lot of very interesting things there. Like, people don't want to participate in a real, in digital contact tracing, right? Because it's so intrusive. People like human contact tracing because at least there is a person to talk to. So if somebody gives me a message that somebody I know got COVID, I don't want to read it in a text. I want to be told by a person with a much more sympathetic view, and at least I can talk through and get some answers to my questions. So that was a very, very interesting study, and we came up with a model of how contact tracing can work, which is basically human driven but backed up by technology. So it still needs a technology database at the back end, but a front end which is more human, so that people don't feel that a machine is just following me all the time and it's in my phone and all that. And many countries did it that way. US didn't, but there were some states in the US that did that, an app-driven contact tracing. So that was one. I just want to talk a little bit about that. The second, I think that we are really interested to look at, I'm very fascinated about, is this concept of algorithmic injustice. And I don't know if you have seen that, but what this is there is a lot of discrimination. So let's say we are in a world where everybody's talking about discrimination, right? And you will hear this concept of social justice and so on all the time in today's world. Now, so what that means is that everybody should be treated equally. And people tell us that, well, if in the real world, I mean, people have biases, humans have biases. So, we don't sometimes like somebody who is, a certain type of person, certain origin, certain background, certain whatever. So human biases lead to discrimination. And therefore, we should use technology, right? Technology does not discriminate. But what this research finds is that technology actually discriminates even more. Tell you why. I mean, it is really the dark side of AI. I mean, we know that robots can be dangerous, right? There's all this sci-fi that talks about it, that, there is this, a robot goes out of control and starts, attacking people or whatever else. Because ultimately somebody is controlling that too. I mean, that's also, there is a human somewhere. But more importantly, what machines do is they make that bias compounded, okay? So they accentuate the bias, they make it much more pronounced, and that can be even worse. So what AI does, which is algorithmic injustice is the word for it, is that it generalizes very quickly. So let's say there are two groups of people, A and B, and when you look at group A and you say, okay, group A, what was your score in a certain subject and in math, and group A gets a higher score, group B gets a lower score. What AI will do is to push all group A people into math type things and group B people into non-math options, okay? It will never say, well, group B people who are not getting the math right could do better if, we did more mentoring, more training, more support, whatever. That same thing happens with credit history and lending and all that, credit cards, lending, etc. That same thing happens across the board in a number of things. I mean, we have done research now. There is a professor at Rutgers called Jerome Williams who came and spoke at Marshall. He passed away, by the way. He had he recently passed away unexpectedly. And that's a huge loss because he's a huge expert in this area. And the idea is that if you feed something into a big data, right, an AI-based big data, artificial intelligence-based big data, the data will compound it and will make it into a rule. So, for example, a name, we have found that Uber and Airbnb will not offer services to people with certain types of names, okay, or certain type of pictures. And they do that because the machine itself kind of picks up on that. It's almost like, there is a terrorist list of, of names in the US database for flying. And anybody with that kind of a name can get caught in that database and they cannot fly anymore, right? Even though that person may have absolutely nothing to do with anything. If the name just sounded familiar or similar. So machines can be biased, much, much more biased than humans can be. And it is a fascinating new area of work where, how do you increase EQ in machines? Okay, emotional intelligence in machines is the question. It is a fascinating work, and I'm very, very passionate about it. And the third thing I wanted to talk about is how do you value companies in stocks, which is always a question I have, which is why do prices go up and go down? If you can figure it out, by the way, you would be millionaires. So we all would be.
Oh yeah, tell me, because it's been a rough last couple of days for the stock market. So we have about 5 minutes left, so I'll go ahead and skip to maybe the last question here, and last and final question, which is, what's one piece of advice that you have for students in this class? If you could leave the students with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Okay, so one piece of advice for the class. I'll say two parts of it, but the first part is read the Wall Street Journal, and there are many odds here, so I'm not endorsing one newspaper or anything like that, but read the business press and watch business TV channels or internet. Nowadays, nobody watches TV, right? But so when I talk about it, I mean on the reading side, the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times or the Economist. Read at least one of them, because your eyes will open. You will start getting to know the names of companies, right? There is a company called Snowflake. You wouldn't even know that if you don't read this business. They got an IPO, they went public, the stock prices are growing. It's a great company. There's another company called Palantir, which is in artificial intelligence, AI type things, surveillance and all that. And that company is booming. By the way, it's a Reddit GameStop kind of a share, which is just booming right now because of all this thing. There is a Wall Street bets on Reddit. The point is, you wouldn't know any of these if you are not doing one of those two things. Read a business newspaper, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, or Economist, and or watch business news on CNBC/Bloomberg/Fox Business, one of the three. Do one of the two types of things or do both. And that's what I do, that's what Ben does. We all try to do that, because if you are in the world of business and if you don't know those terms and those companies and those examples, I mean, what is a share buyback, right? Why do companies do share buyback? You won't even have an idea if you don't follow the business press. Not everything is taught in the class. And therefore, while the classroom theory is extremely important and cannot be dispensed with, you need to go beyond the classroom to connect it with the external world. And you will get addicted to it. You would love the stock market, you will understand companies, and I mean, you will know why, you know, flooding in Kenya will impact coffee prices in America. You will start seeing these linkages, which is absolutely fascinating for an economist or a business person. So that's my main message. And then I'll just end by saying that, you know, focus on 3 things at the end of it as your career goal, and that is engagement, impact, and innovation, right? Engage, build relationships, always important. If you don't engage, I mean, ultimately everybody gets a job because of relationships. Everybody grows because of, if we don't have people to people contact, if nobody believes in you and you don't know anyone, you won't go very far. So it is very important that we build engagement. It's critical. Spend some time, invest in people, think about them, develop relationships. Second, make an impact, right? Make an impact on something. Change people's lives, do something that is a tangible impact in your workplace, in the college, anywhere else. Build a student organization, do some events, help somebody, do something, right? The third is innovation. Think innovatively. It's very important because we all start, you know, just work and work. Everything gets straitjacket. If you have a little time to think differently, it will go a long way. And I think COVID has helped us in that. It has given us some time to think about who we are, what are we good at, and how can we make the world better.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Avi, for joining us. And, you know, like we only have a minute here, so you probably can't answer any questions. But if you have questions, you can email them to me, and I can email them to Avi and get the questions answered for you. So he gave us a lot to think about and gave you all a lot to think about. Some really great advice about the current and the future. Oh yeah. So Gloria says, Gloria Ash says, thank you for your time, Avi.
Thank you.
Yeah, so please email me your questions if you have any questions. And with that, I will let you guys go. And Avi, thank you so much for being here today, and really appreciate it.
Well, thank you again. I had a lot of fun, and just stay in touch. You know, we are always there for you. We are invested in your success, and we will do anything we can to see you successful. So take care and be well. Thank you.